Hello again. This is the podcast Paranormal Family Therapy, and I am the host, Dr. Darren Wallace. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed clinical social worker, and a certified addictions counselor. And I've been working with families since 1996 and have been working with families dealing with paranormal phenomena in family therapy since about 2002, so about 20 years. Paranormal Family Therapy is a podcast that talks about paranormal phenomena and how the psychotherapeutic community interacts with the paranormal, with family therapy in particular. Now, today we are lucky to have LeeAnna Jonas here on Paranormal Family Therapy. LeeAnna is a seasoned paranormal investigator from Colorado with over 50 documented investigations since 2010. She is the team lead of the Spirit Realm Investigative Project, and her investigations have been featured on programs such as the Travel Channel's Paranormal Challenge while she was investigating the USS Hornet in Oakland, California. She's also been on the Bio Channel's My Ghost Stories while investigating the Gilpin County Courthouse and Jail. She has been interviewed on multiple paranormal internet radio shows and featured in several books, including Chronicle of the Unexplained and America's Most Haunted. She's also been featured on local write-ups in the Denver Post, Westworld, and The Gambler. So welcome, LeeAnna, and thank you for sharing your time here on Paranormal Family Therapy. I've been excited about the prospect of interviewing you and hearing what you have to say. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, it's great. So LeeAnna, how did you get your start working with the paranormal and doing paranormal investigations?
Well, actually, it all stemmed from an experience I had when I was 10 years old. That's
Hmm.
where it all began. As you know, and maybe you don't, children are very susceptible to spirit and, communications, seeing manifestations. So we were down in my friend's basement, myself and two other girls, and we had just saw on a television show, or well, it was actually the news, that there was a babysitter who was babysitting a child, an infant, and she killed the baby and then killed herself.
Oh.
And as children do, they like to mess with seances, and
Hmm.
so we were trying to communicate with the spirit and ask her why she did what she did. And I can still see it because I have a photographic memory. But we looked up and there was a silhouette of a woman in a rocking chair with a baby in her arms, and she had a knife in her hand. And
Oh,
we
wow.
all freaked, ran upstairs crying. That is something that I never forgot.
Yeah.
That was an eye opener for me. And the other two gals have, one is very religious now, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But the other gal just, when you have trauma, you just block it out. And she
Hmm.
blocked it out. So about 30 years later, I ran into her, and I'm like, "Do you remember what happened?" And she said, "I know we were scared. I know we saw something bad, but I don't remember because she blocked it out." So I enlightened her again,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
thinking she could handle it now. So that was my introduction to know that there's something that does exist on the other side. And I couldn't deny what I saw. So from there on, I just had it in the back of my head, and I was, into the psychics and the mediums and followed that type of realm,
Hmm.
until 2010 when I was in Denver, or actually Estes Park, Colorado,
Hmm.
and went to the Elkhorn Lodge for an event, a ghost hunt with a team
Yeah.
that frequent that area, and I was hooked. I was hooked. I was like, wow, I can do this.
Hmm.
And within 3 months, I put together a team and we started. And shortly after, we were invited to be on the Paranormal Challenge for the USS Hornet. And that's just what started it. And I haven't stopped since. And the more you're into it, the more you learn about it, and the research aspect of it with the scientific equipment. So that's how I got started. It was from when I was 10 years old. And that's when I knew you can't deny it. You can't deny it as a child. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So that I'm just curious about that story. One of the things that I do is it's important to be able to triangulate when someone is reporting, yeah, I saw something, and when you hear that somebody else also saw the exact same thing, especially at the same time, because sometimes they'll see the same thing, but 3 weeks later or 6 months later or something like that, that they'll see the same thing. But it's very important when you have two or three people that see the same thing at the same time. Now, for you, because you did say there was three of you, right? That
Correct.
one sort of blocked it out. Did you have discussions with it with the third person, the other
She
person that did?
she won't talk about it.
Oh, she won't talk about
And
it at
I
all.
think that has to do with it. And I don't know what faith, other than, particular Christian faith that
Mhm.
she's with, but, just like the Jehovah Witness and other subsidiaries, they don't condone you dealing with the spiritual
Mhm.
world. That's a big no-no.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I think with her, that is the case. I'm not sure exactly what she practices, but I think that she just is in denial that it happened, or she won't allow herself to bring that to light. She doesn't. I think she just blocked it out. She won't talk about it. I and I'm not going to push it because that's
Mhm.
not my place to do
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
That's one thing I don't do, is I
Yeah.
don't push my beliefs on other people. You have skeptics, and I'm skeptical to a point. I have to be. I can't say
Sure.
everything's paranormal, but I do not push that on people. Everyone has their own beliefs, their own experiences. So yes, she definitely, she just won't invite the conversation. So
Yeah.
I
Okay.
just left it alone. But yeah, I mean, if you and what you do, yes, if you have other people that can corroborate the same story, I can tell you they're not lying.
Mhm.
Unless in my case, because I've been on TV, I have to really watch it because people will lie just so they can think that they can get somebody to their home, and now
Yeah.
they're on television. So you have
Yeah.
to watch out for that too.
Well,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I think it's important, at least in the with the families that I'm working with. Mistrust and problems of communication between family members exist. Sometimes that might even be the main issue that they're coming in for. It just so happens that they have, like a spirit or a ghost in the house that's sort of triggering some of this mistrust that happens. And so it's important, at least, to be able to have an understanding, what is being seen by one person. And is that the only person that's seeing this? Or are there multiple people that are seeing the same thing? Because it does make a difference when you have, a family of five and, three of them have seen the same thing versus just one. Now, it's especially helpful when all five have.
Oh yeah.
That makes a huge difference. And part of the work that I've done is this does happen frequently. Is there might be one family member who just isn't seeing, or they do see something, and even if they see it, they're like, "Well, I'm not sure what that was, but it can't possibly be." What you all are saying it is. Yeah. And so, but that's a lot of the work is, because there's mistrust and how to help each other talk about it. So anyway, all right, so that's how you got your start. So can you share with us some of your more interesting paranormal experiences, like things, obviously that first one was very profound for you. How about some of the others that on the investigations? I mean, there's over 50 at least that you've had, so you've
More
had.
than that now.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah,
probably more
but
than that.
that's
Okay.
okay.
Uh-huh.
The one that I can verify to me that is something that is still continuing. We did the Sawyer McShane in Central City, Colorado. It was one of the original buildings there in the 1700s. They
Mhm.
had a great fire that basically burnt down the whole town, and this structure still stood. It was stone, 10,000 square feet. It was used as a mercantile warehouse, and then it turned into various different stores and warehouses, and even Angelo Di Benedetto, who was well known in Denver as an artist. He did a
Mhm.
lot of abstract art. He also had a school there in the 70s.
Yeah.
He died there. So, with us, we like to do background history.
Mhm.
I'm also on the Historical Society at Gilpin County, which is Central City, Black Hawk, and such. And we did some research to find out that Angelo was a maptographer. I can't say it right.
Uh,
I know there's a word for it, a professional word for it, but he used to do mapping for
uh,
the in the service, and he was over in Haiti at some point for some stint, and he started getting into voodoo.
oh,
So when we first went into this location, we did not know that. So we were basically just seeing if we could register any activity on our equipment because not only do I do metaphysical, I also do the scientific approach. I have to because of the skeptics out there. They want
sure.
to see scientific proof. So with the paranormal investigating, that's a big part to use the actual equipment. And most of it is based on electricity. And the reason being is we are full of electricity in life when we're alive and in death. Electricity does not dissipate.
Mhm.
Your energy does not dissipate. Whether you go on or you stay or whatever, you don't, you're eternal with your energy. So when we were in this building, I had a really bad feeling upstairs. And we did the place a couple times and got some responses. And then I had a new teammate. It was her second investigation, and we film everything. I mean,
Mhm.
we weren't even on it. I mean, I've been on a couple TV shows, but as far as my team actually doing investigations for television. That wasn't anything that we were interested in at the time. We just wanted to document stuff in
Yeah.
case that happened. But anyway, to make a long story short, we're in there and I had mentioned, hey, Angelo, I found out that you were into voodoo. What's up with that?
Hmm.
Immediately, we started getting responses. And then we went into his kitchen area, and my teammate started feeling someone choking her
Oh,
physically. And this continued, and was distraught. I mean, I'm responsible for these people. I'm the team lead.
sure.
And so I started, yelling at this spirit to leave her alone, and it just wouldn't. And then on the ovulus, it said squeeze, which could also be choke.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I got to get her out of here. She was like, I don't want to mess this up. I want to continue. Just let me be. And every floor, because it was 3 floors we got on, it attacked her
Mm.
to the point to where I had to hold her up because it had its grip on her back, on her kidneys and her back. And she's like, it's got my kidneys, it's got my kidneys. Oh my God, help me. And she's like falling over and I'm screaming at it
Yeah.
to leave her alone because you can't fight what you can't see.
Yeah.
We finally got her downstairs and they went out and I told my other teammates, start saging her, cleansing her. All my gear was still in the place. So I'm in there by myself with this thing and I'm just yelling at it. I'm like, why did you do this? There was no reason. Why did you attack her? How dare you? I mean, because at that point, my adrenaline was up. I wasn't scared. Next thing I know, I start feeling something in my back squeezing. And I'm
Wow.
like, no, no, SOB, you back off right now. You
Hmm.
back off because you have to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
Even though you can't see them, you have to stand up because fear, they will just eat you alive. That's their thing. And this is the negative ones I'm talking about, not,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Not
So,
not somebody's dead grandma. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
grandma's not going to hurt you. At least I
Yeah.
hope not. So we got her out. I went in, I started yelling at it. I packed my gear up. We got her over to the Century Casino parking structure and just doused her again with sage and
Mm.
tried to cleanse her. And that was basic. Well, we ended up in another place afterwards after we calmed down. We went to a different location because we had two that night that we had to do. Well, when she went home that night, she saw a figure at the end of her
Mm.
apartment complex
Yeah.
inside, and she ran in the house, doused salt water around the doorway,
Hmm.
um, and used sage. Like, don't come in here. That's
Yeah.
a barrier that we do to use, to keep them from crossing over into our space.
Area. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have had a cleanser. He had a cleanser like 3 times to try to get rid of this entity. And he has a name, and I don't like to say the name because that gives him strength and
Yeah.
gives him attention, which he wants.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he followed us to every location after that.
Wow. Okay.
Um, my teammate is no longer with us. and her kidneys shut down.
Oh, wow.
So even though she did have diabetes, that to me that still was a correlation that he did damage,
Yeah.
and I felt very responsible for that.
Uh,
So
well,
I
I'm sorry to hear that loss of
yeah.
a friend. Yeah.
So I mean that was a guy that still shows up. His name still comes up. He's still
Mhm.
I'm on a first name basis with him as far as communication, and whenever I do my events, because he does show up at the place where I do events every year.
Mhm.
I used to say, "Hey, back
Back
the
off.
truck up,"
Yeah.
and I was very forceful with him. And so his retaliation was to not allow the spirits in that location to speak with us, especially the children that still
Oh,
reside there.
so you would
So
dominate them. Yeah. Okay.
he does dominate them. So that was trying because he's still there, and I
Mhm.
feel responsible for letting him loose. But that does prove that they can travel.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
was one of my most. There's something I'll never forget.
Well,
It,
sure. Yeah. But wow, I wouldn't think you would forget that.
no,
Yeah. Well, how do you typically prepare yourself for the investigations that you go on? How do you prepare for yourself? How do you help your team members prepare? What do you do in order to get ready when you go on an investigation?
well, usually what I'll do is I do background on the location.
Hmm.
I interview those who have had experiences there, those who may still, work in this location or live in this location or what have you. So I always do an interview first, and I document everything. Everything's videotaped. I get their permission, and then I say, this may be used if this ever goes out anywhere. Because to me, documentation is the key. You have to be able, because you can't just say this happened and then have no proof of it.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
know,
No evidence. Yeah.
so I do a history background on the location. There could be many deaths that happen there, a suicide, what have you. A lot of that has to do with haunts because those folks have not moved on. And then of course I try to do a background check on the historical site itself, because sometimes, I mean, like, I lived in a home that was brand new and there was a haunt in there because it was attached to the land it was built on.
Hmm.
So sometimes they're attached to the land. It has nothing to do with the home or the building itself, if that's what it is. So it just depends on the location and the situation at hand. So
So let me ask about that just real quick. So you're saying like a person that might live there or something, occasionally you might involve them. What would be something that would encourage you to do that versus no, just stay away for now, let us do our thing and investigate? What's the difference between those two when you do actually get them involved?
well, I think it depends on the actual thing, what's happening to the person. Are they
Hmm.
being attacked? Are they being scratched? What have you? Is there physical violence with this entity?
Yeah.
In that case, no, I will not let them have that. I
Hmm.
won't let them be with us because they've already endured enough. And why would I want to promote any more violence? Then I want to deal with these entities one on one. If it's a family member that they're just curious, my grandma's here, she's taken all my spoons out of I mean, I had that happen.
Hmm.
Oh, where you have
Yeah.
poltergeists, and poltergeists have energy, and they can pick up things and move them. They're not hurting me. I just want to know if they're a family member, if I'm going to coexist with the spirit. Can I be along for the ride? So in that case, yes.
Yeah.
So
I hear you.
yeah, so it just depends on what the spirit's doing, who the spirit you think may be, if they're in any danger, if it's negative, it's demonic, which does
Mhm.
happen. Of course, you're not going to put that person in any more danger than they've already experienced and have been. So that's the difference, and that's the only way. I do a lot of historical sites too, so we don't run into that too much, unless it's somebody. I had a gal that would help us out. I needed someone to film one night. And she's like, "Well, I know the spirits. Why not?" And I'm like, "All
Mhm.
right." So that's okay. And she ended up
Mhm.
helping us on a couple investigations after that. So yeah, it just depends on the situation.
Okay. All right. So I don't know how many of your investigations are actually in like people's homes where people live. Do you notice any trends, any themes from, the stories that you're doing this background check that you're talking about with the people that actually do live there, the families that are there? Do you notice any themes or anything that sticks out to you over and over again?
Yes. And the main thing that starts
Oh, they play
Ouija.
with a Ouija board or something? Yeah.
I won't have a real Ouija board in my house,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
have this little container because I like it.
Uh,
Also, there are people that are doing their own rituals. There are people that are pagan. There are people that are Satanist. I'm not saying pagan's bad, but they do open the door to things because they do deal with the other side. So you have to find out what they could be doing to encourage a hunt. When did this happen? When did this start? Was it like it when you moved in? Was it like it after you did something? And a lot of them will lie to you and not tell you the truth. And then you have to judge people on your experience of their reactions and how they, just like you have an intuition, and from your experiences, you kind of know when somebody may be lying to you or
mhm,
making things up. Okay.
mhm,
Um, so it's the same thing with the paranormal. When you do it enough, you can usually tell, especially if the story changes all the time,
mhm.
they're just adding on to it as they go, kind of like Amber Heard. No,
Well,
sorry.
well, they probably, open more and more up to, what you're asking about when it was originally closed off or keep something from you. Yeah,
Well,
I
and
hear you.
just like police,
Mhm,
they're
mhm.
seasoned. They know what questions to ask, and they know when somebody might be lying. So
Well,
we
yeah,
have to do the same thing.
that part, when you work with folks in therapy, the family members, will give things up here and there, but they may not give up all of it, and then that interferes with trust that they have with one another because your same story isn't the same one over and over again. Your same story actually evolves and changes, and then it creates more anxiety for other family members, right? Because they know they're not getting the same, they know they're not getting the whole story because the story is not the same each time.
Well,
Yeah.
and just like in an investigation with police,
Hmm.
they come upon something that's happened in the streets, they separate everybody and they ask everybody separately to see, what story does this guy have? Does it
Yeah.
coincide with this guy?
Hmm.
So it could be the same way with what you deal with and what we deal with.
Yeah.
I
You're
might talk to some.
triangulating. Yeah.
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 And you got, oh,
Absolutely.
this person said this and this person said that, and nothing jives. So you have to be aware of that, because what is the purpose this person wants you to come to their
Hmm.
home.
Hmm.
So I have to be very pick and choose where you want to go and what battles you want to start.
Hmm.
Because if they're not having a problem, I just say, look, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Hmm.
If they're not hurting you, there's no reason for me to come in there because it could change things.
Yeah, I hear you. I know in the therapy that I do that I will family therapy that then I'll either come into contact or through the family themselves communicate with these other entities, clergy, Native American shamans, mediums, folks like that. Sometimes I speak directly to these folks to, collaborate with them, and then other times it'll be through the family. What about you and your investigations? How much what's the interaction like with mediums? And I mean, maybe they're a part of your team. How much do you interact with clergy, Native American shamans, if it's associated with the land, things like that? How much do you do with that?
I work with a gentleman named David Barnett. I don't know if you heard of him.
Mhm.
He's actually a rocket scientist. He worked for Martin Marietta for years,
Uh-huh.
and he has a scientific background. He was a professor. He's way up there, but he also is a medium, and his vibration level is way up. I mean, he knows past lives. He can cleanse remotely. You don't find that too often, because usually with your scientific mind of a person, you're either street smart or book smart. You don't usually mix the two.
Hmm.
And he believes in the spiritual world, but he also has the scientific background, and you don't come across that too often. It's either or. It's very rare that you find. And just like when I first spoke with you, you introduced me to your so-called now posse of us,
Yeah.
I never heard of a psychiatrist, psychologist that was also a medium. That
Uh-huh.
shocked me.
Hmm.
You don't see that too often. I think that's fantastic. I know a couple shamans, but not anyone that I've interacted on a professional level to know whether I can use them. I haven't really had to use that yet. Anything to do with Native Americans at all. But as far as remote cleansings, Dave Barnett is the guy I go to for sure. And he does deal with negative energies also, and he can
Okay.
cleanse on site or remotely. So it's always good to get to know other folks in that kind of realm, because word of mouth is good.
Hmm.
I go by that too. And then
Hmm.
I'll meet with this person and maybe have them help me out and see how they handle it, because that'll
Hmm.
tell you a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. One of the things that and you know this about me, this is probably one of the first things that you knew about me, is I'm trying constantly to have a collaboration between, clergy and therapists and mediums and paranormal investigators. Do you have any advice or anything to add to that, any ideas on how all these folks can collaborate with one another?
Well, I guess, you need to bring them into the fold after you do a thorough on your end
Hmm.
of documenting what's going on, find out if this is something that is a threat to them or not, if they're being attacked. If they're being attacked, I don't even think that I would go with paranormal investigator, because that's just going to make the matter worse. Definitely clergy needs to be involved, or a shaman, or someone who can cleanse the home.
Hmm.
That would be my first point of having a house cleansing or location cleansing, wherever it may be. It really depends on what you're working with in the situation.
Hmm.
But you do need to have those people in your back pocket to help. Definitely let them know that
Yeah, and collaborate, right?
yes.
That's kind of my whole deal, is how can we get these different professions to collaborate with one another, for the family, in order to get this thing out or integrate with it or whatever it is that they need to do. Is there anything, LeeAnna, that you would like people to know about your work, or anything that they need to understand about the kind of work that you do, before we end today?
Sure. You can check us out. I don't have a regular web page. I don't have time to man one, but I have a Facebook page, of course, which is public. It's called Spirit Realm Investigative Project, or SRIP, SRIP.
Uh-huh.
I also have a YouTube channel. You can just put SRIP3 in the search and it'll come up. It has a lot of my EVPs, a lot of all my radio interviews that I've done,
Yeah.
bits and pieces of evidence that we've gotten, especially for my ghost story that we were on. You guys might want to check that out. The first post on my Facebook page is our episode of my ghost story. It's short because they cut it into 4 different
Yeah.
sections. So
Mhm.
we all got a quarter of that hour or what have you. So you can watch that. You can go Google the Paranormal Challenge USS Hornet. And then True Ghost Stories is on Facet TV. Facet TV. We have 12 teams from around the world, and I'm talking Spain, England, um, geez, what was that one? Scotland, I believe. And then we have ones. We're Team Colorado. We have a Team
Mhm.
Georgia, Team Florida, and they're all actual investigations. This wasn't just. Some of them might have been filmed after we were part of this, because this has been going on 9 years to
Mhm.
finally get this syndicated.
Yeah.
Um, but mine, the first one is when Lolly was attacked. So you want to make sure that you look for the episode for Sawyer McShane. I think on Facet TV, it's like $2.50 to watch it, to stream it.
Yeah.
It may be on other platforms later on. We don't know for sure yet, but also I have at the go if you're here in Colorado in October, it'll be the 15th and the 22nd this year. We only allow 16 people to be a part of it. It's a paranormal investigative seminar.
Mhm.
I teach you first about it. We have refreshments and food. We have door prizes. I teach you about the metaphysical side and the scientific side. So I teach you about the ghost hunting equipment that we use, and then lights out, and we have an investigation. So I do that every year to try to raise money for our museums for the historical society. So you want to check out that. I do post that on my team page, and you can also go to Gilpin History Museums, Historical Museums webpage, which I run also, and look for ticket sales. They're going to be going on sale pretty quickly. So that's another avenue if you actually want to be a part of it.
Look, I might ask you to speak at one of my classes or something like that. I do teach quite a number of family therapy classes at various institutions, and just the students eat this up as soon as we start talking about paranormal and how I integrate that with the family therapy work that I do. I've actually done like a live session in front of the students with
Wow.
a family that their house was haunted, and they just ate that up. They just loved that. And they're like, oh my gosh, we could see how you were using all of these family therapy theories. And it just so happens that they have a ghost in the house. And they just thought that was great. So, yeah, so they'd love to have you in there. So that'd be great. So, thank you, LeeAnna, very much for your time. LeeAnna Jonas, I really appreciate your stories. I know there's a ton more. There's
Oh yeah.
a ton more in there. And I want to thank everyone for listening today. This is Paranormal Family Therapy, and I'm your host, Dr. Darren Wallace. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.